All right, so I've told you before I did serve in the United States Marine Corps. What I probably didn't tell you is that I served I was attached to Marine One, which is the Presidential Helicopter Squadron. Now, I don't want to exaggerate myself or my importance. I'm a nobody. But basically, I wanted to serve my country. I joined a little bit later. A lot of my friends deployed. Some of them saw combat. And man, I have so many memories flashing through my head. But I wanted to join the infantry. My wife put her foot down, said no, can't do that. My ultimate goal is to become a chaplain. And because of certain events, that didn't happen. But in my enlistment, instead of going to combat or deployment, I was honored to get the recommendation to serve with the Presidential Helicopter Squadron. And there I met some of my best friends. You know, it was hard work, but I enjoyed it. But having that experience, I served primarily under President Barack Obama. And the tail end of my enlistment was under Donald Trump incoming. So I'm going to get a little personal. I'm going to share this with you. Barack Obama, his 8 years really spread through a very formative point of my life. And if you think about when he was elected, I mean, I was a young man. I didn't vote for him. I don't want to try to deceive you. I certainly didn't vote for him. But I remember thinking, man, there's so much hope and optimism around this guy, and people really seem to think that he might be some kind of a force for good change, for real change.
This is our moment. This is our time to put our people back to work and open doors of opportunity for our kids, to restore prosperity and promote the cause of peace, to reclaim the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one, that while we breathe, we hope, and where we are met with cynicism and doubt and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
I wasn't clear about what they meant by that change, but I thought, okay, well, there's optimism and the economy's bad, and sort of compared to the previous administration, this guy is so much better spoken. He's clearly intelligent. He's articulate. This is a smart guy, so let's see what he's about. And I remember sort of hoping that he could, bring the economy into a stronger place, maybe bring more fairness, inequality, unity, things like this. Like so many of you, I secretly sort of hoped that, though I didn't vote for him or even really endorse him. I think Barack Obama, his first term, the economic recovery was so slow that the first debate with Mitt Romney for his reelection, he lost. And I thought, yeah, he's not going to get reelected, and he hasn't done the best job. But the media did what the media does, and Barack Obama really did a great job in his next debate. And Joe Biden sort of threw Paul Ryan around a little bit, just slapped him around in the debate stage, and Barack Obama was reelected. Now, that's right around the time when I'm in the Marine Corps, and that was just a time of change for me in my life, huge change. I had sort of stepped away from my, the community I was involved in, this religious community. I stepped away from church ministry full time to enlist in the Marine Corps. During all this time, I'm having doubts about Christianity. I'm sort of questioning a lot of things. But I remember when I finally got through all this training, all this combat training and all this stuff, I finally was able to move back in with my wife and get to my unit and begin to serve. Fox News can be ridiculous. And some of the times I would actually be present or on duty for things that would happen that the Fox News would just sort of run in circle. And frankly, though I disagree with Barack Obama, I think sometimes Fox News can be just absolutely petty, slanderous, nitpicky. And I remember I thought that everything that Obama did, they would say is socialism. Everything is socialism. Okay, well, if everything is socialism, then nothing is. And they really overplayed that card. And then I do think there was a sort of changing ideology that, political conservatives hadn't really woken up to yet. and they're trying to feel out where Obama actually was. And now I think there's a good handle on it on both sides, but at the time, I think they did sort of mislabel him a bit. That being said, I was on duty. I don't think it was an important duty, but I was basically, up super late and saw the news. I was in uniform, saw the news. Barack Obama had, latte salute, the infamous latte salute.
New this morning, we've been watching a firestorm grow online overnight, and it's all over the video that you see here of President Obama leaving his chopper in New York City. Now, if you take a quick look at this video, you may not see why people are so upset right away. But if you take a closer look, a lot of veterans and active military members are criticizing the commander-in-chief for having a coffee cup in his saluting hand as he greets the military personnel at the end of those steps.
And basically he was disrespecting the Marine Corps, he disrespects our troops. And I remember just kind of rolling my eyes, like, come on, the Marine who opened the door for President Obama has a job to do. Barack Obama has a job to do. Could he have saluted better? Yeah, but do we have to talk about this for days? Barack Obama was probably thinking about the meeting he was going to, pretty high profile meeting. And I talked to the Marine that night. He came back, he got done flying with the president. He came back and I said, brother, you're all over the frickin' news right now. Excuse my language, Marine Corps. So he said, yeah, man, it's nuts. I said, what'd you think about that? And he said, I didn't think much about it. I didn't really even notice. He's like, I was just focused on doing what I had to do. And then when he caught himself, he tried to salute and he moved on. I was like, yeah, that's what I thought. My point in saying that is sometimes I think people on the right, not everybody, but some of these media stations can get so petty and so ridiculous, it sort of has discredited them to people who are, consider themselves liberal or on the left or whatever. And they don't take you seriously because it's just petty. The problem there is then when you have a serious critique to make about his policies or whatever, they're apt to just not trust you because they think you're speaking in bad faith. You're just out to get him at all costs. And I kind of resonated with that. While I was stationed at HMX-1, I really, I went through this process. I was still studying philosophy, political philosophy, theology, really trying to lock down what I believed about things, which was a years-long process for me. And I remember thinking, man, okay, so Barack Obama he doesn't actually govern as an economic socialist. He has policies that are, pro-market. Doesn't mean I agree with them. I think I agree with some of his economic ideas and some of them I just don't. Some of them I thought, okay, well, cool, we'll see if it works, but they didn't work very well. But it wasn't as though he's an economic Marxist. He certainly didn't govern like that. So then, I think as time goes on, you have Barack Obama, I think, leaning heavier and heavier into sort of the course I think that the left took since his day. And that is a little bit less about the optimism about the power of our democracy and a little bit more about the deep, fundamental, racism to the bones of the country, deep wrongs of the past, still living, still oppressing people, which to some degree I can say, okay, I understand that. And then shifting that into what's now deemed as identity politics, but what I think is just a form of postmodernism where self-expression sort of trumps any really belonging to this category of beings as human, man, woman, etc. Self-expression at all costs, the will to power sort of thing. People were still ecstatic for him. He was being promoted still by Colbert, Conan O'Brien.
Chicago is a place on the west side called MacArthur's. Some folks know MacArthur's here. Yeah. Some of the best soul food in Chicago.
Soul food.
And I mean, you'll stand out a little bit.
I will not.
There aren't that many 6'6" guys in the restaurant.
It's about time they saw a giant red pompadour in there.
He did have a cool factor to him, and I think he really did shift, and he's a smart dude. So the man sort of shifted the country, I think, left, a little bit different than the liberalism of of Bill Clinton or Joe Lieberman or something like this. Here's what I think has happened, though. I do think when Obama left his second term, people were already more divided. And I think that Donald Trump is a symptom He's not the cause. Now, don't hear me saying I'm defending everything Trump says. I am not. I find some of it distasteful and a lot of it divisive. That being said, I think a lot of his comments are also taken out of context. But I think Trump's election was a response to, a rejection of, a little bit of what Obama had done, but certainly a reaction against the country continuing on that path. Add to that, Hillary Clinton is, I don't mean to be cruel, but she's much less likable than Barack Obama. So here's a trippy one. I was in D.C. when Trump was giving his acceptance speech, and there were a lot of people there, and it was sort of a surreal day for me. I was getting out of the Marine Corps, and this man who is so very different, probably less articulate, he's not an intellectual, he's crude, he's brash. I'm not sure what this guy's all about because of the things he said on the campaign trail. Some of them concern me, right? At the same time, you see a lot of people who love the country, are very pro-America, who are there, supporting him.
Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining, but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again.
And then I see the presidential helicopters fly over D.C. And I looked up, and it struck me, that was Barack Obama taking his last flight around D.C. And so in this time of change for my own life, I see Trump coming into the White House and essentially my boss, taking his one last flight, looking around D.C., and he's out, he's done. And I thought, man, this is trippy. The country is changing. And the country has changed. And I think in the last election, what you've seen is Trump's did some things very successfully in his first term, and I was sort of impressed with some of it, as a lot of people were. But his rhetoric can be just sometimes toxic. Trump leaves office, Biden and Harris come in, and if you're a Democrat, I'm not trying to preach at you or be rude to you, but I think if you back up and see the bigger picture and pay attention to the comments Trump made in context, and then some of the things that they've said, the media has said, the accusations of colluding with Russia, the idea that he wants to have Liz Cheney shot, these things are just untrue. And they divided the country further. And I think the economy being pretty bad, the wokeness, Kamala Harris probably not running the best campaign, being a historically unpopular VP, all these things combined to the country sort of routing Harris out of the White House. I mean, it's historic. But I think this, again, is a reaction and against how far left the left has gone. No, I have friends online, and I have, I read comments under news pages and things. There are people who feel that they are unsafe if they're a minority. They feel that this is a white evangelical, monolithic superstructure, sort of just willing itself back into power to force out minorities. But here's the thing, Donald Trump won the popular vote. And he didn't just win with the old moral majority of Jerry Falwell, which, I have my own issues with. No, he won with Hispanic, Latino, he won with black men, he won with Jews and probably a lot of the Muslims in the Northeast. This is not a white evangelical movement suppressing all other groups or thoughts. Donald Trump has really broadened what the Republican Party is. It's changed. It's no longer just about free markets, though it is something about that. I mean, he brought in tariffs to it. It's no longer just about, trickle-down economics versus Keynesian economics. It's no longer, standing against, LGBTQ groups. Trump is actually sort of in favor of LGBTQ people. He's brought a lot of them in. He has people who are pro-abortion. He, I think, is a little bit pro-choice, though I think he's put in protections for pro-life people. At the same time, his wife is pro-choice. He's brought in just a ideologically and ethnically diverse group of people. And if you look at New York Times map, that's why he won. He didn't just win with white evangelicals. This is a nationwide rejection of what the Democratic Party was offering. I think there are some reasons for that. I talk about it elsewhere. I say all of that to say this. One, I'm not your enemy. Two, I don't see people as a zero-sum game. So if you disagree with me, I try not to undervalue you as a person. Now, I might, if you do something that I think is 97% incorrect and you have 3% of truth, I am still, if I can, going to try to see the value in you and find common ground where I can. I think we need that as a society. And so I don't consider myself your enemy. And so when I look at Barack Obama, I don't see it as a zero-sum game, like he's totally worthless. He did nothing right. I don't see it that way. However, I do think a lot of his policies, foreign policy, some of his economic strategy failed. And I think his emphasis in what we now call identity politics was off base, and I think it divided the country further. And since she left, the Democratic candidates in 2020 moved further to the left of Barack Obama. Barack Obama, I think himself, moved further to the left in his 8 years, and the party just kept going and going and going. To where it's a bit illiberal. It's not quite, we use the word liberal, but it's sort of illiberal. To the point where some left-thinking people are questioning whether or not the Constitution is just a white supremacist document just for white men. We need to scrap it and start over. That's not all Democrats. I don't think it's Barack Obama, but this is the trend. And this is not talking about the violence, which I'm sure Obama would condemn, but the violence on the left that took place. So Trump won the election huge, bigly. If Trump had lost this election, the Trump era would be over. He would be done. He would have lost 2 out of the 3 presidential elections. He would have lost, congressional elections for people that he supported. His candidates would have been, hardly gotten the red wave years ago that they wanted. And so I think the Republican Party would move on. They would say, this didn't work. This is not the future of the conservative movement, whatever conservative even means to these people at this point. However, what happened was Trump won in as close to a landslide as you can get in, I think, this era. He got the popular vote, and he really did do pretty well in the Electoral College. And the House and the Senate. The country rejected what the Democratic Party was selling. When Barack Obama ran, I'll never forget that speech he made at the DNC that put him on the map. He sort of swooped in and took the nomination from Hillary Clinton. And I'm kind of curious what she thinks about that. But his popularity was his own personal swagger, cool factor, intelligence. Really, I think, frankly, his ability to give a speech, his wife's likability with people on her side, her ability to give a speech. By the way, I just want to say this. I know some people who love Trump's personality and some people who hate Trump's personality. I know people who love Obama's personality and people who hate Obama's personality. Interestingly enough, and I do think these things affect how we see the candidates, how they present themselves to people. Some people who are working class people I know on the right just feel like Obama is lecturing them. He talks down to them, like he's an elitist who thinks he's smarter than them. They think he's kind of snooty. Now, you may not feel that way, but I know people who certainly feel that way. On the other hand, I know people who are not in the Republican movement who think that Trump is just a big bully. He's a little toxic sometimes. He's crass. He doesn't speak nearly as articulately as Obama did. But other people think he's a TV personality. He's been telling these jokes on the radio and TV for years. It's hilarious, and they love it. I do think that has something to do a little bit sometimes with how we see these people. But Barack Obama's cool factor has never transferred to any other candidate. He is essentially the head of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was going to nominate Bernie Sanders twice. And twice the party itself manipulated it and took the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I think Barack Obama had something to do with that. Because I don't think he thought this actual socialist could win against a Republican candidate in the general election. And so he made some phone calls and tried to support Hillary Clinton, a more moderate candidate. But she didn't win. Now, he campaigned for her. He gave epic speeches. He had the Obama factor. He came out and he's just the guy that SNL loves. He's all over the late night talk shows. He's giving speeches. But the passion for her wasn't there. Same thing in congressional elections, and same thing with Kamala Harris. Now, I do think, people were so sick of Trump's toxicity that a lot of people voted for Joe Biden as hoping it was a little bit more of the Barack Obama era. But since then, Barack Obama campaigned, and he gave speeches, and he rapped with Eminem, and she lost the election. All right? So I think the Democratic Party is now sort of at a moment of choice. It's at a crossroads. I think from this point on, Barack Obama is going to be very influential in the Democratic Party. But I think as the younger candidates come up and are further and further, at least openly further and further to the left, and the older people like Pelosi and Joe Biden go into retirement, we're going to see where that party goes. If they appease the more fringe elements of the party, the squad, or the violent revolutionaries in the streets. Now, I've noticed this about Obama. He basically, at the last couple of years, he's still a little bit hopey-changey, a little bit optimistic, and I watch him on left-leaning podcasts. He'll go into a YouTuber's channel and talk to him, and they're like, "Hey, you're filibustering, Mr. President. Get back to the question." And they'll sometimes imply like he didn't do enough. He should have been further left, whatever. And I just realized Barack Obama was sort of thought to have ushered in this era of almost European-style globalism, leftism, postmodernism, all the checkmark things that so many millennials believe in. But the country has reacted against that now, vehemently, twice. And Obama can't use his influence to win elections for anyone else besides himself. So I think it's quite possible that the era of Obama is in its twilight years. My question will be, what will the Democratic Party do? I think it has a choice. It can continue to move further and further left of how Obama governed, and sort of double down on what's called identity politics, or I hate the phrase, but wokeism. Jillian Michaels recently started a podcast. Now she's a queer, sort of feminist, fitness celebrity. But she pointed out, like, hey, there's something wrong on the left because it seems like the Democratic Party, anyways, will just take anything that the Republicans say and then move to the total opposite, even if it's totally illogical. They'll just move to the total opposite into insanity. And she's like, this is nuts. This is not, you're not thinking through issues, you're just reacting against it. It's like meme thinking in our political policies. And Jillian Michaels like, this is nuts. Well, I think that's what the left has done. But the thing is, the country has rejected it. So some things I appreciated about Obama was he seems to genuinely love his daughters. He seems to actually try to stick up for people who are in his, his crowd, the people who look up to him and his party. He does really seem to try to work hard to help them. I can say good things about him. But I think it's possible that Obama, over the last couple of years, has, if you watch his speeches, it's a little less hope and change and a little bit more almost frustration, anger. And sometimes he makes very, positive statements, but there's just a little bit more of the frustration showing. And I think it's because some of the things that he ushered in as this sort of, Democrat utopia, we're going to be like, modern Germany or something, has been rejected. And what he signed with a pen, Trump signed equally as quickly, very effectively with a pen, and undid. And I can't help but wondering if I were in his position, I might start taking some of that personally and think my legacy, my work is on the line. My vision for the country is on the line. Now, what I can agree with him on is the optimism, the belief in some of the better things about America. But so much of the things that he sort of promoted, of course, I can't agree with. And neither, it turns out, does a lot of the country. What will the Democratic Party do? What do you think? What I would like to see them do is sort of rethink the strategy of, for lack of a better phrase, wokeism, of the identity politics, some of them are openly promoting literal Marxism. Some of it, I think, is the new left. When Marxism failed in the Soviet Union, so many of the Marxist academics repackaged their Marxism as a cultural model. So Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a book called In Search of a Method. He's trying to take his atheist existentialism and Marxism and find a way to make them meet. Something called the New Left. You should look into that. Some of the thinkers took Marxism and sort of rebuilt it as a model. And those ideas have affected current feminism, LGBTQ, thinking, racial relationships, as far as how they see the history of the country. This very simplistic, I think, toxic, unhealthy view has begun to really influence the Democratic Party. I would really like to see them, personally, walk that back, reconsider that, because I don't want to see that way of thinking succeed. I think it divides us more. And sort of find a healthier, more balanced approach. I also do think, this is me, you can take it for what it's worth, I do think they exercise some serious and obvious legal warfare, lawfare, in ways that was deeply divisive, and I'm hoping we can recover from it. I'm not saying Trump's not also divisive, but the way they went after him for just petty things while letting people on their own side go free, for the reason they impeached him for is, what they tried to impeach him for was the Russia collusion. That fell through, so they just immediately found the next thing and quickly rushed to an impeachment over nothing. This is divisive. I think they need to rethink that strategy, and I hope they sort of walk that back to a healthier place. Now, I don't hate Barack Obama. I don't want you to think that at all. I think if I were to evaluate his presidency, I would say he was a mixed bag that moved the country further into a unhealthy direction towards a sort of postmodern, sort of opening the door towards, for lack of a better word, wokeism. But there are good things about the man too. And, I just hope they sort of rethink the direction that they've taken since his day. So I think I can tell you this. My mother was able to come up and visit me, and I got her to see the HMX-1. She got to see the president's helicopter. Got her a tour of the White House, all this good stuff. And she and my dad got me this. This is a beautiful book. So this is, I think it's the official White House photographer for the Obamas. And it's a beautiful book. It's well put together. And I can see why, like this picture on the back here, I can see why so many people looked up to him as saying, you know, he looks like me. He's sort of positive. And so I keep this book. And though I can't agree with Barack Obama, deep differences with the man, can really appreciate the reason people respect him or look up to him. I was at a grocery store with my family, my daughter, and an elder black woman worked there, and she had a lanyard on, and it was the Obama family, you know, was the art around the lanyard. Now, my daughter knows me well. She knows I'm not a big fan of some of Obama's policies. And she sort of looked at me, and I saw the woman. This is when my daughter was younger. And I said, that's a beautiful lanyard. Where'd you get that? And she just immediately lit up, and she told me about it, and she smiled. And we just had a pleasant, short conversation. Because I think to her, you know, she's not thinking the way I'm thinking about it. Maybe she's agreed with his policies, but I think to her, she sees this as something of the movement that she identifies with. And for me to just come at her or mock her would be ridiculous. It'd be rude, first of all. It would be unhelpful. But also, I think if she and I sat down and had a meal, we'd probably agree about a lot of things. And she's probably a wonderful lady. So my daughter was younger, but I wanted her to see, you know, it's okay to disagree with somebody and not pick a fight at every moment. It's okay to know you disagree deeply about something, but still find some kind of common ground with the other person and just have a friendly chat and move on. Sometimes we need that. And I sort of wanted my younger daughter to see that. I wish our society would get back to that just a little bit. There's deep differences, but I think we're going to have to relearn how to get along here pretty quick. I think both political sides, including Barack Obama, are not always fair to the other side. I mean, the way he treated the little sisters of the poor, I think was a cheap shot. But it doesn't mean that, you know, I have to reject him fully or hate everything about his supporters. That being said, I do wish that party sort of rethinks the direction that they're going in the era in which I think that man's influence is going to wane, I think, in the next decade or so. I wanted to add that I think one thing we can do is sort of reevaluate, stop beating each other over the head. We're going to disagree. We're going to have deep disagreements. But if we can stop treating each other like the absolute enemy all the time, that would be helpful. And then I think if we can retrace our steps through actions or even in our ideas that have led to this increasing deep division. I spent a lot of years doing that. It's one reason for me I became a Catholic. I think that the wisdom of the centuries of the church, for all the mistakes of people in the church, sort of actually is a corrective to the far left excesses of, you know, wokeism. But it also does warn against the potential excesses of capitalism. That the Catholic Church has warned against fascism. It's warned against Marxism. As these things are happening in real time, it doesn't mean that every Catholic, even every Catholic priest, has been perfect or hasn't gotten involved in bad movements. But the idea would be that the church had the wisdom, the understanding of historic philosophy, I think the Christian faith, the teachings of Christ, and the wisdom of the centuries to see these movements as they came about and give warning and say, hey, you know, this Marxism isn't compatible with Western civilization or with Catholicism. Don't do this. Fascism is not a good thing. Back off. Things like this. So for me, I found a lot of answers there for a lot of questions over the centuries. But whatever you decide, I think if we stop beating each over the head and sort of retrace our steps, that would be a great thing. Hey, whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you know that your life matters. Someone really does love you and thinks about you when you're not there. So take care of yourself. Life's worth living. And I appreciate you taking time to watch. I know we're all busy. We're all stressed out about politics right now. But I genuinely appreciate it and hope you're taking care of yourself. Thanks for watching. God bless.